Picture this. Your neighbor Don and you have always been the definition of good neighbors. You share tools, swap stories over the fence, and help each other out with everything from shoveling snow to lending a cup of sugar. The fence between your yards isn't just a boundary. It's a meeting place, a symbol of trust and easy friendship. But then, out of nowhere, Don decides to build a towering electric wall right on the property line. Suddenly, he's charging you a fee just to pass over a bottle of maple syrup, and the easy back and forth you once had is gone. The fence that once brought you together is now a barrier that keeps you apart. That's exactly what happened on a much bigger scale in February 2025 when President Trump shocked everyone by slapping a sweeping 25% tariff on most Canadian imports. It was a move that sent shockwaves through both countries, upending decades of friendly trade. This wasn't a gentle warning or a subtle negotiation tactic, it was a knockout punch, a bold statement that the old rules no longer applied. The tariffs hit everything from Nova Scotia lobsters to auto parts, and the rules seemed to change overnight, sometimes on a whim or even a tweet. Canadian businesses suddenly found themselves scrambling to adapt, unsure what would be targeted next. Imagine waking up to find your main expense has doubled, not because of market forces but because of a single decision made far away. For many, it felt like chaos. Uncertainty ruled, and every day brought new challenges. The message from Washington was crystal clear. We'll make life hard until you give in. It was economic pressure, pure and simple, designed to force Canada's hand. The logic behind it? Squeeze Canada hard enough, and it'll have no choice but to fold. After all, 75% of Canadian exports head south to the US, surely that's leverage. But instead of backing down, Canada looked at that electric wall and said, "So that's how it is? Fine." Rather than cowering, Canadians dug in their heels, determined to weather the storm together. The tariffs, meant to flatten Canadian resolve and force submission, ended up doing the opposite. They sparked a new sense of unity and determination across the country. The neighborly fence was gone, replaced by a battle line, one that was clear, cold, and unyielding. The US had misread Canada's politeness for weakness, not realizing there's real steel beneath that friendly surface. Canadians are known for saying sorry, but they're not afraid to stand their ground. The trade war had begun, and with it, the rules of the relationship were rewritten, setting the stage for a showdown that would test both sides like never before. Before the tariffs, Canadians bonded over hockey, Tim Hortons, and winter woes. These were the threads that stitched together the fabric of daily life, simple pleasures that defined what it meant to be Canadian. The country's identity was shaped by shared experiences, cheering for the same teams, braving the same snowstorms, and gathering over double-doubles. Overnight, Trump gave them a new cause, proving him wrong. Suddenly, there was a sense of urgency, a spark that ignited something deeper than just frustration. Canadians, known for their politeness, found themselves united by a common challenge. The tariff sparked a wave of nationalism. Suddenly, buying Canadian was an act of defiance. Grocery lists changed, and shopping became a statement. Every Made in Canada label was a badge of honor, a small but meaningful way to push back. Vacations to Florida were swapped for trips to Banff. French's ketchup replaced Heinz. Even the smallest choices became political, as families reconsidered where to spend their dollars and what brands to support. The #Buy Canadian movement swept the country, quietly but firmly. Social media buzzed with pride, and hashtags became rallying cries. It wasn't just a trend, it was a movement that brought people together from coast to coast. If their money was a weapon, Canadians simply aimed it elsewhere. Every purchase was a vote for their own economy, a subtle but powerful act of resistance. The Elbows Up rally in Halifax became a symbol, citizens standing together not as victims but as a united front. Across the country, similar gatherings echoed the same message. Canadians would not be pushed around. This wasn't just about economics, it was about identity. It was about what it meant to be Canadian in a changing world, and how adversity could bring out the best in a nation. For decades, Canada lived in America's shadow. Now it was time to stand apart. The country was ready to assert itself, to show the world, and itself, that it could chart its own course. The message: Canada is a sovereign nation, not a 51st state. The red and white maple leaf stood for independence, resilience, and pride. As one protest sign read, "We're the friendly neighbors, not the doormat." Canadians wanted respect, not just from their neighbors, but from the world. The tariffs, meant to teach Canada a lesson, instead taught it self-respect. What was intended as a punishment became a catalyst for unity and pride. Canadians found unity in adversity, and a new sense of national pride. The country discovered strength it didn't know it had, and a voice that was ready to be heard. The country was no longer just polite, it was resolute, determined to define its own future, together. Amid the crisis, Mark Carney became prime minister, a calm finance expert thrust into chaos. He tried diplomacy, setting a July deadline for talks, but was met with escalating tariffs and abrupt walkouts from Trump. The final straw, Trump torpedoed all trade talks over a digital tax, humiliating Canada on the world stage. Carney responded with a historic press conference declaring the old US-Canada relationship over. This was the Carney Doctrine. Canada would no longer be the compliant partner. He threatened tougher retaliatory tariffs, framing the conflict as a fight for sovereignty. "We will not be bullied," he declared. For the first time, Canada wasn't just reacting, it was charting its own course. The world took notice. Canada was done playing second fiddle. A new era had begun. Canada's defiance came at a steep cost. The decision to stand firm, to protect its principles and industries, sent shockwaves through every corner of the country. The economy slowed to a crawl, then shrank. Exports to the US plunged by over 15% in a month. Factories that once buzzed with activity fell silent, and the border, once a symbol of partnership, became a barrier. Key industries, steel, autos, aluminum, were hammered. Plants that had operated for generations faced closures, and thousands of skilled workers were left in limbo, uncertain about their futures. Business owners faced impossible choices. 56% scrambled to adapt, 30% halted investments. For many, dreams built over decades were suddenly at risk, and the pressure mounted with every passing day. The pain rippled out, service industries suffered, consumer confidence collapsed. Restaurants, shops, and local services saw fewer customers, and families tightened their belts, unsure of what tomorrow would bring. Stories like Wes Love's, hit with a $35,000 tariff bill for a late shipment, became common. Each invoice, each headline was a reminder of how quickly fortunes could change. In Nova Scotia, lobster towns faced ruin. In Halifax, one company lost $25 million and 170 jobs in a weekend. The impact was swift and devastating, leaving entire communities reeling. The tariffs weren't just numbers, they were lost jobs, shuttered businesses, and broken communities. For many, it felt like the heart was being torn out of their towns. The economic engine sputtered, choked by uncertainty. Every day brought new questions and few answers, as the nation braced for what might come next. Canada was caught in a global trade war crossfire, with China piling on its own tariffs. The world seemed to be closing in, and the pressure from all sides was relentless. The cost of standing tall was real, and it was paid by ordinary Canadians. Every household felt the pinch, from rising grocery bills to the uncertainty of paychecks. But the country refused to back down. Across the nation, people rallied together, determined to weather the storm and defend what mattered most. The price of sovereignty was steep, but Canada was willing to pay it. In the face of adversity, the nation's resolve only grew stronger, forging a new sense of unity and pride. The tariffs were meant to hurt Canada, but America got burned too. Trade is a two-way street. Block one lane, and you jam up both sides. The US relies on Canada for critical goods, especially energy. New York's green energy plan depended on Canadian hydropower. Suddenly, that lifeline looked shaky. Security experts warned, what if Canada turned off the tap? The tariffs exposed America's own vulnerabilities, especially in energy and trust. The old partnership, built on reliability, was now in doubt. America learned its prosperity was tied to Canada's goodwill. By trying to bully its neighbor, the US revealed just how much it stood to lose. The trade war's most chilling moment came from Ontario Premier Doug Ford. A Trump ally, Ford shocked everyone by threatening to cut off energy exports to US states if tariffs targeted Canadian energy. "I'd do it with a smile on my face," he said. This wasn't diplomacy, it was a street fight. The US realized Canada wasn't a helpless victim, but a partner with real leverage. For decades, America took Canadian resources for granted. Now the threat of losing oil, gas, and electricity became real. The smile on my face quote became infamous, a sign Canada wouldn't be pushed around. For Americans, it was a wake-up call. The trade war could mean cold winters and dark cities. The relationship had entered dangerous, uncharted territory. The 2025 tariff war was more than an economic fight. It was a turning point for Canada's identity. The crisis exposed the risks of relying on the US for prosperity and security. Canada began rethinking everything, military, trade, and its place in the world. The goal wasn't to sever ties, but to ensure Canada was never again so vulnerable to a single neighbor's whims. New trade deals, domestic investment, and a push for self-sufficiency became priorities. The trust that once defined the relationship was gone, replaced by caution and resolve. Canadians learned their closest friend could also be their biggest bully. The pain forged unity, strength, and a sovereign voice. The old relationship is over. A new, more independent Canada is emerging. This time it's built on hard-won respect, not quiet compliance.